The unspoken question, football dominates conversations in offices, classrooms, family gatherings, and almost every social setting you can think of. Entire nations come to a standstill when their team steps onto the pitch for an important game. Strangers become best friends in pubs and living rooms, hugging and celebrating like they have known each other for years. But somewhere in that crowd, there's always one person who feels completely disconnected from all of it. The person might be you. It's the one who sits there wondering why everyone around you is so emotionally invested in 22 people chasing a ball on grass. You are the one who has faced that puzzled expression from friends and colleagues. Countless times when you admit that you did not catch the big match, the question always comes, and it always carries a tone of disbelief mixed with genuine confusion. What is wrong with you that you do not enjoy this thing that the entire world seems to love? But that question is pointing in the wrong direction entirely. The real question worth exploring is, what is actually happening inside your mind when everyone else feels excitement and you feel nothing at all? Your brain is not broken, and you are not forcing yourself to be different just for the sake of standing out. Something specific is going on in your psychology. That makes football feel meaningless to you, while others treat it like the most important thing in their lives. Psychologists use a term called value dissonance to describe this exact situation. It occurs when an activity that society celebrates as universally enjoyable simply fails to activate the reward systems in certain people's brains. Your mind seeks fulfillment through pathways that football does not provide, and that is not a defect in your character. People who do not watch football usually fall into one of 4 distinct psychological types, and each type reveals something powerful about how their minds process meaning, pleasure, and emotional connection. Recognizing which type you belong to is one of the clearest forms of self-awareness a person can develop. The tribal brain, before we break down the 4 types of people who do not watch football, we need to understand why this sport has such a powerful grip on the rest of humanity. This is not simply about entertainment or killing time on weekends. The psychology behind football obsession connects directly to how human beings evolved over thousands of years. And understanding this will make the contrast with non-watchers much clearer. Our ancestors survived because they formed tight-knit groups that protected each other from threats and shared resources to stay alive. Being part of a tribe was not optional back then because isolation from the group often meant death. This desperate need to belong became hardwired into our brains over countless generations. And it never disappeared even though modern life no longer requires us to hunt or defend territory together. Football activates this ancient tribal programming in ways that few other things in modern society can match. When you support a team, your brain treats that group of players and fellow fans as your own tribe. Scientists who study the brain have found that watching your team score a goal triggers the release of feel-good chemicals that create genuine sensations of happiness and satisfaction throughout your body. Your nervous system is actively rewarding you for demonstrating loyalty to your group, which is exactly what kept your ancestors alive. This explains why devoted fans use the word "we" when talking about victories even though they never stepped onto the pitch themselves. The brain does not make a clear distinction between the team, its achievements, and your own personal success, because it genuinely perceives the team as an extension of who you are. Researchers call this phenomenon basking in reflected glory, and it reveals why winning feels so deeply personal even when you contributed nothing to the actual result. Now that we understand how powerful this tribal instinct truly is, the psychology of non-watchers becomes even more fascinating to examine. Type 1. The self-focused thinker. The first type of person who does not watch football has a mind that remains completely unstirred by the achievements of others. There is no animosity toward the game itself, and no judgment toward people who spend their weekends glued to matches. The issue is purely neurological in nature, because their brain does not produce emotional responses when witnessing someone else accomplish something. Psychologists have a name for this capacity to feel joy or thrill when observing another person succeed. And most people experience it automatically without ever thinking about it. But for the self-focused thinker, this response simply does not activate in any meaningful way. Stadium could be shaken with 60,000 people losing their minds over a championship-winning goal, and this person would be sitting there with a completely neutral internal state. They observe the chaos around them and a single thought keeps surfacing in their mind. What does any of this have to do with my own life or my own progress as a person? This is not emotional numbness or a personality flaw that needs correcting. The brain of a self-focused thinker is wired to release reward chemicals only when they personally accomplish something meaningful. Finishing a difficult book, solving a complex problem, building something with their own effort, or acquiring a new ability through practice are the things that make them feel genuinely alive and fulfilled. These individuals operate with minimal need for group approval, and they possess a strong internal drive that does not depend on external sources. Their identity is not tied to any collective, and their mood does not rise or fall based on what a team of athletes does on a weekend afternoon. Others frequently misinterpret this disposition as emotional coldness or a lack of connection to the world around them. But these are people who simply derive zero psychological benefit from investing emotions into outcomes that exist entirely outside their own sphere of influence and personal growth. Type to the disillusioned observer. The second type of person who does not watch football once had a completely different relationship with the sport than they do today. There was a time when they would rearrange their schedules to catch live matches, and when they knew statistics and player histories that would impress even the most dedicated supporters. Football occupied a significant space in their hearts and their weekly routines for years. Then gradually, their perception of the entire thing began to change in ways they did not anticipate. They started questioning what they were actually investing their emotions into every time they sat down to watch a game. The commercial machinery behind professional football became impossible to ignore once they started paying attention to it. Athletes earning more in a week than most people earn in a decade. Ownership groups treating clubs as financial assets rather than community institutions. And sponsorship deals plastered across every available surface. This began to paint a very different picture than the one they had believed in. The sense of authentic connection they once felt started to feel manufactured and hollow upon closer examination. What had seemed like genuine tribal loyalty now looked more like a carefully engineered product designed to keep them consuming merchandise, subscriptions, and endless media content. This type of person did not abandon football because they wanted to feel intellectually superior to those who still enjoy it. Their minds simply arrived at a place where the gap between the romanticized version of the sport and its commercial reality became too wide to ignore any longer. Continuing to participate in something that now felt fundamentally dishonest to them was no longer something their psychology would allow. Walking away from football was not a statement of judgment against anyone who remains a devoted fan of the game. For the disillusioned observer, it was simply a matter of their internal values no longer aligning with what the modern football experience actually delivers beneath all its surface excitement and pageantry. Type 3, the redirected mind. The third type of person who does not watch football carries no resentment or criticism toward the sport in any form. They have not turned away from it due to some philosophical revelation or growing cynicism about its commercial nature. Football is simply something that exists in the background of their lives without ever capturing their attention or stirring any emotional response within them. Their minds are fully occupied by entirely different domains that generate genuine excitement and deep engagement for them. One person in this category might spend hours researching architecture and urban design, while another loses track of time exploring wilderness photography or restoring vintage motorcycles. Someone else might find themselves completely absorbed in learning foreign languages or studying the history of ancient civilizations. The specific interest matters less than what it reveals about how their cognitive systems operate. Every person has a unique configuration of mental triggers that determine which activities produce feelings of absorption and satisfaction. For millions of people worldwide, those triggers align perfectly with watching athletes compete against each other on a field. For the redirected mind, those same internal mechanisms respond to pursuits that involve personal exploration, skill acquisition, or intellectual depth. Sitting through 90 minutes of a football match feels monotonous and unstimulating to this type of person because their brain simply does not register it as worthy of sustained attention. Meanwhile, they can spend an entire weekend immersed in a subject that fascinates them without experiencing a single moment of boredom or distraction. This has nothing to do with considering themselves above mainstream entertainment or deliberately cultivating obscure hobbies to appear interesting. The truth is far simpler than that. Their neurological makeup responds to certain types of stimulation, and football does not happen to be among them. They are not suppressing any secret desire to join in when their friends gather for a big match, because there is genuinely nothing there for their minds to latch onto in the first place. Type 4, the honest realist. The fourth type of person who does not watch football has arrived at their position through a process of straightforward logical assessment that strips away all the emotional and social layers surrounding the sport. They have examined football with clear eyes and drawn conclusions based purely on what they observe rather than what they are supposed to feel. Within this group exists a subset of individuals who experience a sharp, psychological discomfort when confronted with the extreme wealth displayed in professional football. They watch players sign contracts worth more money than they will see in multiple lifetimes while they themselves navigate daily financial pressures that feel inescapable. The contrast between what appears on their television screen and what exists in their bank account creates a form of cognitive friction that makes viewing genuinely unpleasant rather than entertaining. For these individuals, the act of watching football does not offer temporary relief from their circumstances, but instead magnifies an awareness of economic gaps that they would rather not dwell upon during their limited leisure time. Choosing not to watch becomes an act of protecting their own mental state from unnecessary negative comparisons. The other subset within this type approaches football from a completely utilitarian angle that has nothing to do with personal financial situations. These are people who evaluate activities based on measurable outcomes and tangible returns on invested time. When they examine football through this framework, they find an activity that consumes hours without producing any concrete improvement in their knowledge, skills, relationships, health, or career prospects. They recognize that the final score of any match will have absolutely no bearing on any aspect of their actual existence once the broadcast ends. This realization makes it difficult for them to justify allocating precious hours towards something that leaves no lasting residue in their lives. Neither subset carries hostility toward football or the people who follow it passionately. Their position stems from an unflinching honesty about their own needs and a refusal to participate in activities that do not serve those needs in meaningful ways. The attention economy beyond the four psychological types we have explored there exists a broader environmental factor that helps explain why football struggles to capture certain minds in the modern era. This factor operates beneath conscious awareness and affects how human beings allocate their focus in ways that previous generations never had to contend with. The digital landscape of today has been constructed by companies whose entire business model depends on keeping your eyes fixed on their platforms for as long as physically possible. Teams of specialists study human behavior patterns and design interfaces, specifically intended to make disengagement feel difficult and unsatisfying. Every swipe and tap has been calculated to produce a response that encourages continued interaction with the content being presented. These platforms have created an expectation of constant novelty and immediate gratification that traditional forms of entertainment are never designed to satisfy. Content refreshes continuously and adapts itself to individual user preferences based on behavioral data collected over months and years of usage. The experience becomes increasingly personalized until it feels like the platform understands exactly what will hold your interest at any given moment. Football operates on a completely different model that predates this hyper-personalized content environment by over a century. A match unfolds at its own pace with periods of build-up that require patience and sustained attention without any guarantee of exciting payoff. The broadcast is identical for millions of viewers, regardless of their individual preferences or past viewing behavior. For people whose daily media consumption has been shaped primarily by personalized, digital environments, the traditional structure of football can feel misaligned with how their minds have learned to consume content. The sport asks for a type of attention that competes poorly against platforms built specifically to accommodate fragmented and impatient viewing habits. This represents a collision between old and new models of capturing human focus rather than any deficiency in the individuals who find themselves drawn elsewhere. The parasocial illusion there is a specific psychological phenomenon that occurs when human beings form emotional attachments to people they have never met and will never interact with in any meaningful way. This type of attachment develops through repeated exposure to someone's image, voice, and story without any possibility of genuine reciprocal connection forming between the two parties involved. Football creates ideal conditions for this phenomenon to flourish on a massive scale. Supporters watch the same players week after week, year after year. Observing their movements and expressions and reactions across hundreds of hours of broadcast footage, they learn to read body language, anticipate behavior patterns, and interpret emotional states of individuals who occupy significant mental space in their daily thoughts and conversations. The psychological experience of following a player closely begins to mirror the emotional texture of actual relationships in certain ways. Joy arrives when they perform well, and disappointment settles in when they struggle or face setbacks in their careers. Some supporters report feeling genuine grief when a beloved player retires or transfers to another club, as though they have lost someone who mattered to them personally. Yet beneath all of this emotional investment lies a fundamental asymmetry that certain individuals find impossible to ignore once they become aware of it. The supporter has constructed an elaborate internal relationship with someone who has no knowledge of their existence whatsoever. Every feeling generated by this connection travels in a single direction and dissolves into nothing upon reaching its intended destination. Some people look at this arrangement and simply cannot convince themselves to participate in it. The idea of generating authentic emotions for someone who will never return them, or even acknowledge their presence, feels like a form of psychological labor that produces no genuine reward. Walking away from football becomes easier when the emotional mechanics underlying fandom are examined with complete honesty and clarity. The introvert factor human psychology contains measurable variations in how different individuals recharge their mental batteries and what conditions allow them to feel most comfortable and functional. These variations have direct implications for whether someone finds football appealing or entirely unappealing as a form of leisure activity. Certain people experience their optimal state of mind when they are operating independently or in the company of just one or two familiar companions. Extended periods surrounded by many unfamiliar faces and competing voices leave them feeling depleted in ways that require significant recovery time afterward. This is not shyness or social anxiety, but rather a fundamental aspect of how their psychology processes and responds to varying levels of environmental intensity. Football as a cultural phenomenon rarely offers conditions suited to this type of person. Match viewing typically occurs in settings designed to amplify collective emotion through shared physical space with other supporters. Pubs become packed and noisy on match days, while stadium attendance involves hours of immersion in an ocean of strangers, all generating sound and movement simultaneously. The expectations placed upon supporters also create friction for individuals with this psychological makeup. Football culture rewards visible displays of partisan enthusiasm and frowns upon those who sit quietly observing without contributing to the collective atmosphere. Someone who prefers processing experiences internally rather than expressing reactions outwardly can feel out of place and pressured to perform emotions they do not naturally exhibit. For these individuals, the entire package of what football fandom involves represents a mismatch with their fundamental needs. The sport itself might hold some theoretical interest, but the social infrastructure built around consuming it creates barriers that outweigh any potential enjoyment. Recognizing this incompatibility allows such individuals to make peace with their disinterest, rather than feeling defective for not sharing the enthusiasm that seems to come naturally to so many others around them. Throughout this exploration, we have examined multiple psychological dimensions that explain why certain individuals feel nothing when the rest of the world loses itself in football. The self-focused thinker derives satisfaction exclusively from their own efforts and progress. The disillusioned observer recognizes the empty machinery operating beneath the surface. The redirected mind dedicates enthusiasm toward pursuits that resonate with their unique curiosities. The honest realist allocates time only toward endeavors that produce meaningful outcomes. Beyond these four types, we discovered environmental factors shaping modern attention. The asymmetry of emotional bonds with distant figures and personality variations that create friction with collective viewing culture. None of these explanations involve hostility toward the sport or contrarian posturing against popular interests. Each represents clarity about personal needs and honest acknowledgement of individual psychological makeup. Choosing not to watch football is simply choosing to honor how your mind actually works. Which type are you? Share your answer in the comments and subscribe if you want more content that helps you understand yourself better.